Expanding your Amazon business internationally requires proper tax compliance to avoid account suspensions and legal issues. In this video, you will learn how to navigate tax requirements when selling in different marketplaces, including VAT registration timelines, fiscal representation needs, and key compliance considerations for each region. If you need help managing your international tax obligations, you can check Taxually. You will find the link below in the description.
Hello, Tom. Welcome to the Orange Click YouTube channel to share a simple guide how e-commerce sellers and also Amazon sellers could expand internationally. And today we're going to mostly focus on the Europe, US, and also Australia, which I think all these regions are very interesting for the e-commerce sellers. So let's first start with your introduction, and also can you give us a short overview how Taxually usually helps Amazon sellers to kind of navigate through expansion process by helping them to be tax compliant.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Great to be back on here to say. I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago since I last been on an Orange Click channel. So great to be back. And hi everyone, my name's Tom. Partnerships Director here at Taxually. You're probably tuning in thinking, do I need to know this? It's a little bit of a boring topic, but it's a serious one and one that you want to try and take as much attention to as possible. So yeah, my experience really is 8 years in e-commerce, Amazon expansion, all things expansion as well. So not just tax, but supply chain and logistics through to, optimization, launch strategy, and of course a specific focus in more recent years on tax. And Taxually as a company, we've been around for about 6 or 7 years now. We've got tens of thousands of customers that use our platform. We're a SaaS-based tax technology, and we really try and simplify tax registration and tax filing globally. So you'll probably be thinking about expanding at some point, and you'll need to know all of these things. So we're going to try and cover as much off today as possible.
Yeah, very good. And so, well, you kind of mentioned it might be boring, but actually, to be honest, I think throughout recording a lot of videos with different experts and organizing events for Amazon sellers like European Seller Conference, where Taxually is actually also present with your members. The fact is that sellers are asking so many questions about being tax compliant, about expansion. I think expansion is super relevant topic for sellers and e-commerce company owners in general. So I think you're definitely doing a good job trying to educate people about it and then also helping them to be compliant. So I'm really excited to hear your quick guide for today as well, which you're going to share for us. So I think we're ready. And also viewers, if you're watching this video and throughout the presentation, when you're following Tom and you have any questions, just leave them as comments below the video, because then we can ask Tom or Taxually team members to come back to the video and give you short answers as well.
Awesome. Yeah, look, getting into it. I think one of the first questions maybe to ask before we get into the presentation is normally around when is the right time to expand. I know you guys have a great audience when it comes to educational content for Amazon brands of all shapes and sizes that are looking to actually get into either selling or optimize for further profitability or potentially exit. So I think one thing that's worth mentioning is whatever position you're in, whether you're a brand that's just starting, whether it's a concept in your mind and you have a full-time job and you're thinking about doing it, or if you're an Amazon brand that's turning over tens of millions that's looking to go international. There are hopefully little bits and bobs that we can focus on today that will give you some idea of what that roadmap could look like, because it does take a long time to successfully expand, and there's a lot of things that you need to be able to have in line before you can actually take that step successfully. And Lisette, from your side, I'm sure from being in the community, it's often it's pretty often that you get asked the question of when that right time to expand is and what those sorts of things are that businesses need to think about.
Sure. Yeah, of course. And so, yeah, hopefully this video is also a great starting point to even as you said, start thinking about it, and also kind of have this first information based on what sellers can then either contact you or learn more information and then actually put everything into action. So I know you prepared a slide deck for us as well to better follow you along. So yeah, open it up and then we are all ready for you.
Great. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. As I said, I'm going to be giving a high level overview on how Taxually can support, but really focusing in on like when the right time to expand is, what are the sort of key considerations before a brand should look to expand. Maybe look at some of the common mistakes that we see. It's often something that a lot of people like to talk about. And then I want to give super high level information on like what you should consider from a tax perspective before expanding to UK, EU, Australia, and the US. I said we're going to try and keep this really short. So the idea is that you just get a really high level overview for the sorts of things that you need to consider. So I give a quick introduction to myself. I've been in the space for some time now. I've been working at Taxually for about 2.5 years as partnerships director. And really, Taxually has been so successful over the years, mainly due to the fact that we've really simplified global tax compliance through a easy to use platform. So as I said, we have around 20,000 users of our platform today. And we have thousands of new customers joining us. And that's a complete array from Amazon users to e-commerce, Shopify, D2C users, as well as digital goods and SaaS products as well. And in terms of like the actual service offering, it's very broad. So if you're looking at different tax requirements in different countries, you look at VAT, you might look at GST, you might look at sales tax. That's all under sort of the Taxually umbrella. And I don't need to necessarily go into much more detail on this slide, but ultimately there will be a lot of different things that you'll need to adhere to when expanding internationally. And a lot of that, in fact, the vast majority of those things will be covered within the Taxually service. So, we're going to go into a bit more about expanding internationally, which is far more interesting than understanding like why clients enjoy and love using Taxually. I don't know if you can love a tax provider, but we've got to solve a problem. As I said before, like it's all about saving time so that you can focus on growing your business and actually making things, decisions and actions that are actually going to make a difference to your bottom line. Taxually as a company, you think, okay, let's say I'm a UK based business. I'm thinking of expanding into Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Canada, Australia, wherever. Amazon's made it so easy for you to be able to actually get into those additional markets, providing you go through that checklist from a compliance perspective. So imagine a world if you're not already there where you have 10, 15, 20 different countries that you're storing physical inventory in, and you have all of these registration requirements, compliance obligations, filings on a monthly, quarterly basis, maybe annual basis. Having one platform, like, think about your internet banking. When you log in, you can see all the money that you've got, you can make transfers, you can do this and that. It's just one clear image as to where you are with things. Think of Taxually in the same way as that, but for your international tax. Okay. That's how I always explain it. It seems to resonate with people a little bit better than trying to go into detail on all of the different tax rates and filing frequencies and all of those sorts of things as well. One of the major things that's really set us apart and allowed us to simplify the process is all of the connections that we have with the likes of Amazon, Shopify, Stripe, eBay, and many more. And of course, like once you're set up, you log in, you can see exactly what to pay and when, and the ongoing management of that is much, much easier. So if you're feeling like you need support with international tax, then feel free to reach out. Coverage, we are a very global company. We currently service around 85 countries for physical and digital goods. But the most important thing that I want everyone listening to the video today to take away is some nuggets to be able to go and implement into your business. So going back to the rest of your team to actually understand why you should be looking to expand to new markets and what that process is. And when you expand internationally, there is a lot of loopholes to jump through. There's a lot to think about when it comes to tax. So specifically, if we look at the UK and EU, and you talk about physical goods, outside of your company and country of incorporation, the most important thing is that you need to know in most countries is that you need to register for local VAT. Okay, so VAT in the local country. So think as soon as you move physical goods at bulk into a certain country, you have to register. And that registration process is really important to know, depending on the country, can take many months to obtain. Okay, so you say after this, Tom, I want to expand to Germany. We've heard that our product has really great opportunity in Germany. Our competitors aren't there. It's less saturated in comparison to the UK. We're really keen to move into that. What do I need to go and do? So I would then talk you through the tax registration process in Germany, but you might not be aware that it actually takes around 12 to 15 weeks on average at the moment to actually obtain that number. And that is from the point where you actually upload your document and it's accepted by the tax office. And that's really key, accepted by the tax office. A lot of people will say, oh, well, I spoke to Tom 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We must only be 2 months away from going live. When actually the fact of the matter is that it's all about when the tax office has accepted your application, it takes around 2-3 months to get you registered. So that's the first thing, timeframes. Then, of course, you need to remit your tax. You'll think maybe if you're a US LLC or US individual and you're hearing me talking about VAT and taxes and all these things, it might be a little bit confusing, but ultimately it's similar to sales tax where you have to pay your taxes to local authorities on a monthly, quarterly or annual basis, depending on your revenue or thresholds that may be applicable in each country. Another thing you're going to need is an EORI license. Again, really happy to talk people through this on a call on a one-to-one. So feel free to reach out after to go into detail on this. But ultimately, an EORI is basically your passport to get your goods through customs, is the way I like to say it. It makes it much easier, or it's a must-have, but makes it easy to get to clear customs. Since Brexit, you do need two, one for the UK and one for the EU. Again, Taxually can help you obtain that alongside your VAT numbers. You then got different schemes like OSS and IOSS, less relevant when we're talking about Amazon sellers. But again, happy to talk people through that on a call. Feel free to reach out. And then another term that you may come across quite frequently is fiscal representation. If you're based outside of the EU and wanting to sell in the EU, you will need what's called a fiscal representative, which actually can be on your behalf. And it basically means that we are sort of joining and severally liable for tax payments on your behalf. So it's a representation for people on the ground that are partly responsible for your taxes. A lot of information to go through here. I'm sure hopefully everyone's keeping up, but I'll trying to keep it simple. The other thing that people need to be aware of throughout the EU is EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. And this is all about the end life cycle of products. So all about how you can make contributions to these organizations that cater for the impact of the end of use of the product. Things like packaging and batteries tend to be the most common categories within EPR. Lisette, I know you're listening and nodding on. Any questions on the UK and EU side or anything you think I need to touch on in a bit more detail?
I maybe wanted to ask, so like all of these things you highlighted are very important and based on the company and like where they're based at and where they want to sell. Obviously, they need to go through all of this and learn what is kind of needed for them. But I wanted to ask, because you have been in the space for a while now, are there any like kind of more recent updates to any of these points that we should be aware of? Or let's say for the past half year or year, things have been mostly the same? Because I know a few years ago, there were some things that changed. How is the situation right now?
Yeah, I think, depending on the country, there is always changes that are going on. I think in terms of like as the Orange Click audience is mainly Amazon sellers, there have been a lot of changes over the past few years that have really helped simplify the registration and ongoing filing and compliance process. Ultimately, the need to still register for that in the local country that you're storing in is remained the same. And depending on whether you're selling DTC versus whether you're selling on Amazon will impact the business with regards to like OSS and IOSS. But no, this is the most important information that's relevant to any Amazon seller looking to expand to the UK and EU today.
And do you have any like recommendations where Amazon can be kind of like up to date? I don't know, Taxually, do you have like a blog on your website, for example, or like if anything big is about to happen, like especially if it like influences something regarding like selling on Amazon?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're constantly posting content out to our audience and users. We do a lot of different educational content across the board. So yeah, but really the key thing with us is that our calendars are always available for people to book in. So as and when we're happy to take that on and
Okay.
jump on a call.
So good call to action now to check also the link in the description of the video. We're listing all of the important links to reach out to Taxually there. So if you have any questions, as Tom said, you can reach out and schedule a call. And also probably it's a good idea to follow you on social media then.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the US, I'm going to keep this really short. The US, if as an Amazon seller, is actually super simple. Obviously, the marketplace facilitator came in, and really it means that Amazon, in very simplistic terms, means that Amazon are collecting and remitting the tax on your behalf, as the marketplace is the deemed facilitator. However, if you have an omni-channel approach and you're selling via your own website, let's say a Shopify, a D2C platform, you will need to keep an eye on Nexus thresholds and make sure that you're staying in line with your tax obligations. I just said Nexus as another term that hopefully everyone listening is familiar with if they're selling in the US. But if you aren't familiar with Nexus, Nexus is very similar to what we used to call distance selling thresholds before new laws came in. It basically means that there is a transactional like the limits or a revenue limit to when you need to register for sales tax in a given state. So let's say you're selling from one state to another. If you go over the threshold, then you will trigger a liability in the country that you're state that you're selling to. So again, Taxually has a Nexus study that we do for all of our clients when they come on board, if they have or think they have liability. As you can see, you've got these different types of Nexus, from physical Nexus to economic Nexus, and really the states to keep an eye on. And it can be quite complicated with other providers when it comes to like getting that visual representation for where you need to register and why. But Taxually has really simplified that process and gives you that risk score, your estimated exposure based on both economic and physical Nexus. So yeah, keeping the US super simple. If you're an Amazon seller in the US, you have less to worry about, but still would recommend having a consultation for free just to check that you're all good. And if you're selling, B2B or retail and D2C, then I would definitely recommend reaching out. Okay, we're flying through them. Australia is next. Australia is a really interesting market. It's one that is becoming more and more popular from what we're seeing on our side. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits for being in Australia apart from the weather. But actually selling products, a lot of people that sell seasonal products in Europe like to start shipping over to Australia just because their seasons are on the reverse. But yeah, in terms of the country as a whole, and importing there is super easy when you get it right. The most important thing to know about Australia from a tax perspective is we're looking at GST, so goods and services tax, and the GST rate, so same as VAT or sales tax, just a different term, is 10% on most goods and services. The good thing is with Australia is, like, again, putting myself in the shoes of a seller listening to us now, is so I'm a UK-based business. I've been selling on Amazon for a few years. I think actually my products and brand would go really well in Australia, and I've done my due diligence. I understand like what it takes to get there. and I've got all my product compliance sorted, my label compliance sorted, and I'm ready to start shipping. The good thing is that unlike the UK and EU, where you have to have your tax number immediately, you can actually start importing into Australia up to 75,000 Australian dollars in sales before you need to register for GST. Okay, so you get that like trial period, if you like, which a lot of brands do take advantage of. But it's worth noting that in some cases you won't be able to actually reclaim your import GST. But again, we can come on to that in a little bit more detail. Depending on the size of business, a lot of businesses that are doing sort of 2-3 million upwards look at Australia as a a very clear strategy for this year. And yeah, obviously to be able to test the market is a massive benefit. We talked a little bit about timeframes earlier. I do a lot of consultation with brands that are looking to scale internationally or optimize their business for further profitability. There's a huge number of areas that brands can optimize. I know Orange Click do a lot of drill downs into different optimization tactics, from PPC to supply chain management to whatever else, and which is great. But when you talk about launch strategy and like go to market of a new country when expanding, there is quite a comprehensive checklist. So I would really recommend people get their ducks in a row to be able to actually not make a meal of it. And when I say make a meal of it, is purely because I've seen so many brands that have taken too many months and additional work to get there, when really if they'd just spoken to the right people, they would have been able to actually be super clear on what it takes. Why is this relevant to timeframes? Of course, supply chain management, inventory, cash flow, all of these things tie into expansion. When you're looking at Australia and Germany, UK, and France, etc., as core markets to expand to, really you want to be allowing a good 3 or 4 months for your VAT number or tax number to come through. And just so people know, when you're registering for tax in these local countries, a lot of them aren't digital. They're actually relying on a physical piece of paper in their tax office, arriving either by post or through the printer, and it comes through, and they're physical people checking off these documents. This is the incorporation documents. This is their passport. This is that. Yes, I'm happy to move this company forward for a VAT registration. That is how archaic the tax registration process can be in some countries. In some countries, it's been digitized and it's been a bit more efficient. But when you go through that process, don't just think it's like a click of a fingers and you're going to get your numbers straight away. It really isn't as simple as that. Trust me, I wish it was. It would make our lives a lot easier. So, launch strategy, really think about timelines. I'd say, like, realistically, what are we now? We're sort of mid to late February. Even when I start thinking about April, I'd be thinking about like even March, April, you'd be thinking, do I want to be launched and running effectively for Q4 sales this year? Like, that's how far I would recommend coming back. By the time you've got everything together, you have, this is obviously international. So, you've got your shipping. You don't want to be rushing with air freight. You want to be, going via sea and saving valuable money and margin on doing things slowly but properly. And then, of course, you get your inbound stock into FBA or through your 3PL. You've then got the process of actually scaling this new market. You might have transferred some reviews, but you haven't actually got a proven track record. You haven't understood the market. You haven't optimized your keywords for new languages and different things like that. And it's going to take some time to adjust. But my point is that, you talk about 3 months, 4 months for tax registration from start to finish. You then talk 2-3 months for optimization and understanding the market and seeing what your search results are and sales results are. So really, like, any brand that's thinking about getting into a new country in for Q4 sales, which is where 65% of sales typically occur in that quarter, start thinking about it now. It's really, really important to do so. Or we've probably got time to cover GPSR, which is another exciting topic that I like to talk about. Goods and product safety requirements regulation. So GPSR, as it says here, effective December 13, and replacing the previous GPSR directive. But ultimately establish a modernized framework for consumer product safety across the EU. It's not something that Taxually is actively promoting. We're in early stages of releasing something though, so happy to advise on it. But ultimately, it's to ensure that there are registered addresses for compliance reasons in the UK and EU. And since Brexit, again, you're going to need to have a responsible person in both countries. But I don't feel like we need to dig into too much detail on GPSR today. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. It's been a topic of conversation across the industry and ecosystem for some time now. And we're happy to jump on and advise on it as and when. So I think that covers the majority of what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you so much. It was a very good guide and definitely gave some thoughts to the sellers watching us, because I think you mentioned a few different elements and also you talked about different markets. So hopefully people will reach out to you now and also ask additional questions if they have any. I wanted to ask about VAT registration. So most recently you showed how much time does it typically take for each country to apply and get the VAT number. In your practice, do you see also that sometimes sellers are not able to get VAT? It's kind of like rejected. And if you see that, are there some common reasons, or is it usually, if everything is kind of more or less all right and the documents are there, it's like usually approved?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that causes us the most issues from a customer care perspective. The tax office, in certain countries, as I said, can be just physical people. I could send one application and the exact same application for another company with the same documents, and in some cases, it's rare, one could be accepted and one could be turned away. It's that archaic in the way that they're set up. Now that doesn't happen a lot. The only other reason that some things would be rejected or additional documents might be requested is based on the country of incorporation or state of incorporation. There are a lot of additional documents that are required in some instances in, let's say, California versus another state in the US. So that really can trigger some level of complexity based on where they're incorporated as an entity. To be honest, the process isn't overly complicated. The advice that I give to people when they start is it's not the funnest process to go through. You're registering for tax in an international country. It's not meant to be fun. Watching your sales grow on Amazon is fun. Doing the tax registration process is really quite dull. We want the same result, which is to get EVAT registered as quickly as possible. I just say work with us as closely as you can to get the paperwork in and get the required docs in. And know that if we ask for a wet signature in blue ink, that's not because we want it. It's because the tax office require it. So it really just is a case of how closely our clients, customers pay attention to what we ask. And it is the real nitty gritty detail of what is requested from the tax officers that can get things turned away.
All right. So close collaboration with you would be helpful for both sides. What about onboarding to you? So probably there are sellers and e-commerce business owners listening to us who maybe already have some tax advisors, or maybe they have tried to do some things on their own, but not really sure if everything is done correctly and would love to have like professional help and a partner in these regards, especially when expanding even further, right, internationally. Then how is usually the onboarding process for a new client, and how fast you're kind of able to onboard businesses? And also, do you help to kind of look back and make sure that, like, I don't know, the previous VAT returns and everything was kind of done properly?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. So onboarding really depends on the situation. When we talk about onboarding, are you involving VAT registration or not? If they're already registered and they want to move over, we can do that in a few days. It doesn't take long. So it's very common that a lot of people use like another provider with Amazon VAT services, or they used they try to do it themselves. The one thing that is worth mentioning here is that certain countries, especially in the EU, require you to have a physical representative rather, and they wouldn't have been able to do that without having a physical rep. So yeah, if you're using someone already and you're like, oh, are they doing a good job? Do I know where I am? All of these sorts of things. That's a question that we get a lot from clients that are moving over to us. I think the main thing is peace of mind. Taxually as a company, I think tax is a really complex topic. It's one that people don't enjoy. No one enjoys taxes. If you do, you're very strange. And the most important thing is to have peace of mind on where your business is at any one time. There's nothing worse than having that lingering thought of, am I up to date? Did I pay this? Are the tax authorities going to shut my account down? Is Amazon going to suspend me? And it's such a common case that happens through not paying tax. So to be able to just have, your point of contact at Taxually, and to ensure that you can just log in to your platform whenever you want and see all of the various countries that you're registered in, when the next filing is due, all of those sorts of things is just what makes it as easy as possible.
Okay, gotcha. Well, very good, Tom. Thank you very much for all of this information and thoughts. And before we wrap up and go for today, could you highlight once more what's the website address of Taxually and what's the best way to get in contact if anybody wants to reach out and schedule a call?
Yeah, for sure. Website www.taxually, taxually.com. Feel free to message myself. It's Tom Meek on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. More than happy to jump on, give people some time, whether that's half an hour, whether you're established, just starting, whether you have your taxes sorted or don't. And if you're in a real mess as well, a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't want to speak to a tax provider because I haven't paid my taxes for 2 years. We will work with you to try and come up with a solution. And you then go and make your decisions as to what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, would love to chat to as many people as possible. And really appreciate you having me on.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. And it was great to see you after a long while. And hopefully I'm going to be able to see you soon again and educate our viewers together about how to stay tax compliant. So thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
I hope this video will help you to stay tax compliant while expanding your Amazon business internationally. And if you need any help, check the Taxually and what they do. The link is in video description. And if you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe buttons to see more content like this in the future. And now I recommend you to watch this video where you will learn how to optimize your Amazon listings for international marketplaces. Check this out.